This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
It's the same day for us, but a different day for you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to part 2 of the mailbag here on Setting the Pace, your go-to Pacers podcast. I'm your host, Alex Golden. I'm joined today by Michael Facci, of course, and we are here to talk more Pacers basketball as we're answering your questions from the mailbag. And today we're spending all of our time talking about the longest tenured Pacer, Myles Turner. Facci, I'm excited about this one.
I'm so excited. I never left my seat. That's how much I missed everybody. I stayed put, and we're back. So I'm going to kick off this first question. It's just from Joe Reagan said, and hopefully I pronounced that right. I believe it's Reagan. Call me out if I pronounce it wrong.
I think that's right, Facci.
I want Myles to remain a Pacer. With the cap pressure the Pacers will face, though, do you see the Pacers move on after next season? Would they stick with Jackson, Wiseman, and maybe a $10 to $15 million cheaper option rather than pay Myles $30 million or so? Myles is required. Maybe it's required to pay Mathurin.
Yeah, so a lot going on here. Basically, he's saying if Myles Turner is worth $30 million or so, do you bring him back or do you go the cheaper route? And the big question here is, can they afford Myles and to re-sign or extend Benedict Mathurin on a rookie scale deal where he's going to get paid a significant amount of money? I think the number to watch for Mathurin is very interesting to me to see how close it is to Nembhard's. If it's higher, if it's lower, if it's in the $20 million range, whatever, that will play a factor, which we did not really factor that in last episode when we were talking about all the money that could be there. Now, you seem a little bit more on the fence about Myles and what that could be like. I just wonder what the contract's going to be like because, yeah, $30 million sounds great. I don't think Myles is going to get that. I think they might do some kind of contract where it's like, okay, and maybe it's a 3-year deal where they start out at like 25 million in the first year, then go to 27, then go to 29 by the end of it, or something along those lines where it's kind of, I'm probably doing the percentages wrong of what the money would be, but you know what I mean, where it increases by a certain percentage each year. So as the cap goes up, his contract goes up, and it's not, hurting you as much percentage-wise up against the cap. So that's kind of how I see it. I don't know if Myles wants to sign a 4-year deal. He might with a player option, but it seems like the Pacers have kind of been getting away from the no player options as well. It seems like there's a lot of leverage in the front office's hands right now with being able to make these deals with how they want to structure them. So, I do think that Myles will be here, like I said last time. But if they do move on from him, I think it's going to be via trade. And I'm trying to think of what players make sense, but you're still going to have to pay somebody. So you mentioned Zubac as a potential replacement as a free agent. Like, that's someone that's still young enough that could make sense compared to some of the other guys you mentioned, like DeAndre Jordan and Brook Lopez and all these older guys, right? Like, they don't make a lot of sense. But, like, let's just say, for example, okay, I mentioned Daniel Gafford last episode. What if they're like, okay, if we have some kind of combination of our centers of Gafford, Wiseman, and Jackson, right? Maybe they can get by with that. But I think that they like having that center that has that shooting element to them because of what Pascal Siakam said he likes. And I'm kind of curious to see if Pascal's three-point shot improves. And he works on that a lot this offseason, knowing that the Pacers shoot a lot of threes. And maybe that makes it a little bit easier to trade. But he was saying like playing with Turner was one of the biggest things for him. So I'll get out of the way here and let you respond. But I just feel like at this point, it does make some sense that maybe they do trade him, and trading him to Dallas could make some sense but they have Daniel Gafford, or not Daniel, they have Derek Lively. So I don't know if they'll want him, but I do think that there are teams that would have interest in Myles if they want to go that route to trade him because it's going to cost too much. But I do think he'll remain a Pacer.
I think Turner's going to be looking to cash in. I think he's never hit free agency before. We know he will hit free agency before. The Pacers cannot negotiate with him or come to an agreement by any means until the season's over. So that's going to make things a little bit trickier. We talked about last episode, there's not going to be a lot of teams that A, either have a need for a center, or B, have a lot of cap space. Maybe that helps the Pacers out, but also the Pacers' reluctancy to be a second apron team in the past. Chad Buchanan talked about it as end of the season press conference. He said, well, we haven't really been in this situation because we haven't felt that we had the roster, a championship roster, to warrant paying that second apron. If you're just bringing back the same team, is that going to warrant to say, hey, look, this is a championship roster, or is this just bringing back the same team? So that's something to really think about. You are not going to find someone better than Myles Turner. I want to preface that when I say, that it's going to be tough to bring him back.
Realistically, that
Yeah,
could be
like
brought in.
exactly. Like, yes, are there guys out there that are better than Turner? Yes, there are. Are you going to bring them in exchange for Turner? No, you're not. So I think at this point, you look at the Pacers have re-upped a lot of players on this team. If you do want to pay a guy like Benedict Mathurin, you can't also pay Mathurin and Turner and just keep this going. Like the Pacers, they're not that team that's operated to pay the tax like that. I mean, right now they're like $400,000 below, where they need to be. I mean, they're counting every
The
nickel.
first apron.
Exactly, the first apron. They're
What if
not.
they go into the first apron?
Yeah, I mean, they could, but
Could it be a first apron team and not a second apron team? Is that a realistic thing to you?
It could. It could. It's possible, but like how much? It all depends on what that number is for Turner. Like, here's the thing. He's going to be 29 this year. This is his time to sign like a 4-year contract and lay it all on the line. Like, I don't think Turner's going to want to sign like a 2-year deal and then hit free agency at like 30, 31. Like, I think at this point, like this is his time to sign that 4-year deal. And if he signs it as a Pacer, he could potentially be a Pacer for life. Anything like that could happen. But I think, like I said last episode, if Indiana does not feel that they can bring Turner back, they are not the type of team that can afford to just let him walk. They would have to work out either a trade or a sign and trade after the year. But I think that Indiana should be counting every dollar, knowing if you re-sign Turner, you're probably not giving Mathurin a deal. I just don't think that's going to happen. And Mathurin also needs to show something to earn it. So there could be a scenario where Benedict Mathurin balls out this year, and now it just makes that decision a little bit easier to say, hey, we got to save some money for Mathurin. So my gut tells me Turner's probably more likely to not be here unless he's willing to take some sort of a discount, and that might mean $25 million or less.
This might sound like a bit of a hot take, but I think there's a higher chance Mathurin's not on this team in 2 years than Turner.
That could very well be a scenario, because here's the thing: if the Pacers want to get better and make a trade, Ben Mathurin kind of has to be in that deal right now. Yeah. So I'm with you on that. I just feel like it scares me to death if Myles Turner's making $30 million a year on this team. Because here's the thing: let's put it in perspective. I looked at it. Last year, he played 27 minutes per game. That's his lowest since his rookie year. Right now, the last 2 years, you can make an argument, have been Turner's best years. Not an argument, they have been. Best 2 years. Last year wasn't the same as the year before. And we've talked about this, do you see him taking a step forward that can warrant $10 million more per year, aka an extra 33% of what he made last year? I personally, sadly, don't.
I just don't think it's possible right now with where the center market's at in the league. Just feels kind of vague. It feels like there's a lot of players out there that, you're in the center market. To me, it's like there's a handful of guys that I think are like top tier MVP level, and then you got your like all-star, all NBA level, and then you've got your like, yeah, I like those guys. And then there's like a major drop off, and Myles is in that third tier, right? Because he's clearly not an all-star. He's a ways away from it. I like his interactions today on social media, talking with fans about, excited for stuff and things like that. But we know that he loves to be here. And I think that I don't think he's going to take a hometown discount just to take a hometown discount. I don't believe that. But I do think that he would take a hometown discount, quote unquote, to play for a winner in Indiana than go somewhere else just to make money. I think that winning matters to him, and I think that he's got so much money already that it doesn't matter as much. I'm like, sure, you want to keep making money. Like, obviously, who doesn't want to like keep doing the best they can possible? But it's like, even Pascal Siakam took a bit of a pay cut this year, right? He could have got a 5-year max deal, and he could have been like, okay, give it to me, or I'm going to go get it somewhere else. And the Patriots would have had their backs against the wall and said, okay, we're going to give it to you. But instead, they're like, no, let's do 4 years. And there might be a reason for that, because they could redo another deal and after the end of the 4 years, whatever. But, he didn't get the full amount of money he could have gotten. You see a guy like Jalen Brunson just took a pay cut for his team to be able to re-sign players. So maybe Turner feels like, you know what, I just like being here in Indiana. They've believed in me, the embrace he had with Pritchard. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I don't think 30 million is what he's going to get. I'd be shocked if he gets that. I think the Hartenstein thing, everyone wants to go back and compare that to that. I just think that was a specific situation for this past offseason, and I think that always happens, and people always try to use that as an example. But he can go back to it and say, well, this player got this, and I think I'm just as good as him or better, so I deserve that much. But it doesn't always work out that way.
It doesn't. I look at the Nick Claxton deal next, 4 years, $100 million, and I just say Turner absolutely deserves more money than Nick Claxton. Now, the Brooklyn Nets had more money to work with, and a young team that's rebuilding. Like, you got to re-sign someone. But I just feel like there's no scenario in my mind where Turner's making less than $25 million a year, because I think he's probably earned it at this point.
Yeah.
He just has, and he shouldn't have to take such a pay cut just to come back.
I think $27 million annual average value is what I'm kind of thinking in my head for him.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess this could be a story for another day, but it's like, how do the Pacers get? Who's got to go in order for that to happen? Because that's the thing.
Maybe we're just overthinking this, and Mr. Simon just pays the second apron tax for 1 year. I mean, he might. He's getting older, right? I don't think we can rule it out completely, especially if this team does well. I think a lot of it depends on the success of this team this season.
That's where my head went next. Is like, if Indiana's bounced in the first round, like what makes them want to just say, you know what, I'm going to commit more money to this team than I've ever committed before.
Yeah, they're going to want to make a bigger trade. They're going to say we're really missing X position. Let's go out there and make that big move. We've got the pieces to do it. I think that's where they're at. Let's keep it moving. Christopher Lloyd, longtime listener, always a great person to send in questions. He said, "Great pod, guys. Recently, y'all threw out $25 million per for Myles' next contract. If Hartenstein got $29 million and Myles has similar numbers as the past 2 seasons, I think a lot of teams want in, and the bidding for his services starts at $35 million a year. What say you?"
No.
Look, no, that's all I got to say.
No. It can't be. That's just too much of an overpay. It really is. $35 million is reserved for, true all-stars, I feel like, or, all NBA type players. If Turner takes a step forward, I think he definitely could be commanding $30 million a year. I really think he could, but the right team has to have that money available, or, work out some sort of sign trade or anything of the sort. So I see $25 million probably as Turner's floor. But I think it's in that $25 to $30 million range.
If it wasn't for these daggum aprons, I think Turner could get more than $30 million potentially from a team, but everybody is so limited right now.
They are.
And that's the problem, right? So, I mean, Turner's a very, very, very skilled player for his position. Very good shooter. Has showed some big moments throughout his playoff career already with Indiana, but there are limitations to what he can do. And I think everybody knows that. Like, while he's a good player, like you said, he's not an all-star. I think only all-star level players are going to get $35 million a year. Like, let's just say what it is. Brandon Ingram, right? He's an all-star level player at the wing position. He's making around $35 million. Nobody wants to trade for him. Nobody wants to re-sign him. No one wants to extend him on that contract. And he is a guy that's, I believe, younger than Turner at this point, right? And he's playing a position of that a lot of teams covet more than what Turner's position is. So I just think that if you're looking at those two players and comparing them instead of like Hartenstein's situation, it just kind of shows you like, okay, Myles is a good player, but let's not overthink this. I don't think $35 million a year is realistic at all, my man. I just don't think $35 million for Turner is that. And if he can get that from some team, then he has to leave Indiana, because I just don't think Indiana can afford that.
No, I just think, look, if that's the number, if you're exceeding $30 million, I just think the Pacers need to just, they need to walk away. And I know that really hurts to say, and that's really tough, but that would be an overpay, because I do think that we're looking at Turner being in probably the perfect position for him to really succeed. And it is another contract year, and I would love to see him, think about this. Like, if Turner could get to 20 points and 10 rebounds.
Come on, stop dreaming.
I know. I am dreaming. That's the thing.
Wake up.
Hey, I gotta pinch myself or something. Look, that's the thing. If he was able to take that type of step, then I think you could say, oh, wow, this is different. But, like, he's shown he's a good player, but he's a good player that might max out at 17-7. And that just might be who he is. And the shot blocking, honestly, isn't what it used to be.
No.
It used to be elite. It hasn't been the same as in years past, but I very much root for him. He stayed healthy, which is absolutely worth something. Turner has been very healthy the last 2 years, And I do hope that he gets his money. I just hope that it works out for him to be able to stay in Indiana, because Indiana can't do any better than Myles Turner right now. That's for sure. But next question, we have Chris Weech. He said, is there any world where we enter back into the Myles Turner trade rumor season around February? What intel would you have to know to pull the trigger on a midseason trade versus letting him walk for nothing or overpaying him?
Good question, Chris. And I think a lot of people obviously, love Myles Turner. And Chris did say that in parentheses here. He says, by the way, love Myles and want him to retire Pacer. So
He did.
Chris is not rooting for a trade. He's just asking, are we going to end up getting back to that spot? And I think that we might, especially if the Pacers are not where they need to be at in the Eastern Conference standings, right? That to me is the big question mark there. And if they feel like there's a player at that position that becomes available that they would like to invest in long term. I don't feel like they're going to do that kind of trade at this point. To me, it sounds a little bit crazy. I think that they'll have some idea of what that number is going to be like for Myles in terms of contract for next season. And if they feel like they're nowhere close to it in talks, they might just let Turner play the season out and not worry about it, and then just say, hey, let's just talk about this extension stuff in the offseason when we can, because right now we can't. And it really won't matter, and then you won't be able to see what teams are available. But, yeah, I think that there is a chance that we do see them come up again at least, whether it's from Indiana or other teams trying to get Myles from Indiana and putting those rumors out there. But I don't think we're going to be seeing it where Indiana's like actively shopping him. The only intel they would need to know is if Myles says, hey, thanks for the services. Thanks for the years. I'm glad I was here for 10 years, but I'm going to move on because I can get more money elsewhere. And that's when they can maybe say, okay, we know long-term we're going to have to make this trade anyway, so let's do it. Because you mentioned earlier you don't want to lose the asset for nothing. But I just don't see a lot of teams wanting to trade a significant value back for a guy that's on an expiring that might not re-sign with him.
Yeah. Sadly, look, I think that we're absolutely going to enter into that space at one point, because anyone who's not under contract becomes a talking point. And I think at that point, come the trade deadline, depends where Indiana's at. I don't expect the Pacers to be sellers if things aren't working out. I think they love the team that they have in place, but could teams be calling? Absolutely. It could definitely happen. I've always trusted the front office, though, that if they feel that they will not come to an extension with someone or bring them back, they get ahead of it. They did it with, from Buddy Hield. It's everything pointed to that he turned down a deal in the beginning of the year, and eventually the Pacers dealt him at the deadline. Victor Oladipo turned down that extension. That was someone who got traded a little after the season started. I trust when the Pacers make a move that they didn't just wake up one day and say, yeah, you know what, let's make a change. Yeah. So I think the Pacers salary books do not look like they used to. They've dished out some contracts, and I think that everybody can't get paid, but I think that Turner is absolutely deserving of being paid. So we'll see what they're able to work out. Maybe they do end up working out some sort of consolidation trade at some point where you've freed up and made that decision a little bit easier. But for right now, I'm on the opposite side of Alex, where I feel like it's probably 50-50 at best if Myles Turner returns. If that's a cop-out, I'd say it's probably 40% that he returns, unless he's willing to, like I said, come back at $25 million or less.
Yeah, I think my stance on this has changed, and it's kind of teeter-totter just because I don't, I'm just saying in general, like back and forth all off season long. Like I've been thinking about it, and I just don't see a world where it makes sense to let him go with trying to compete at the highest level.
I agree.
And this is a guy that I think is going to have a Rick Smits type of career with the Pacers. He's going to retire a Pacer, in my opinion, unless it's like right at the end of his career where they end up trading him or something like that. But overall, I do just feel like at this point, Myles belongs with this core, and I think he's earned that spot, and I don't think they can get any better. But let's keep it moving here. Pacer faithful, Chuck and Jamie, they said, do you feel the Pacers are at a crossroads by the end of the year where they'll need to decide to either take a step backward or go into the tax to keep Myles? Or is there another way to keep improving?
Chuck, Jamie, they're at that crossroads. They broke out the map, and they got a tough decision to know which way you're going. Because at this point, the Pacers in second apron, it's hard to even put them in the same sentence. It just really is. I just have not seen this team fork out blank checks before, and they've cut some checks, like I mentioned moments ago. And I just think that at this point, it's going to be hard to justify giving Turner a $10 million raise or anything of that sort, the way the books look right now. So could Turner take a bit less, maybe sign like a 3-year deal and something like that? Like, yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, what if there's a scenario where, I mean, could you see it maybe being like, what if it's like a 3-year deal that was a little bit more than 20 and then it jumps to 25 and then is at 30 at the end? Could you see something like that? Or
I don't know if that would work mathematically.
yeah, like
How
I
they're
don't
going
have
to do this, the raises,
book
like percentage
right in
wise. I
front of
think
me.
it's 5 or 8%. I forget. I would have to look into more of the
I think it's an
contract details.
8% raise is what he can make. So I've never been a good mathematician, but at the same point, maybe it could be 22 and a half, and then it goes to 25, and then
Yeah,
and then
which I
so
mentioned
on.
earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So something like that, maybe. But if there's someone else that has the money to do it, and we'll see who can clear off cash, from now until then it's going to be hard to compete with those offers. So I would love for Turner to be back. Like I've said a few times over this episode and the last, Indiana's not going to find a better option, someone that fits this team. But they also have to have a certain number in mind where they might have to be prepared to walk away.
Okay, so here's what I will say to this.
Yeah.
I don't think the Pacers have to take a step back drastically if they let Turner go. I think they can find that position and fill it better than any other position on this
I
roster.
think they could do it with numerous people, not just one guy.
Maybe, but I'm just saying, like, if Turner were to leave, like, obviously it's a big blow because that there's not a lot of center depth on this team that makes you feel confident in what they can become. Like, I wouldn't even feel good about if they still had Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson filling in that role for, like, even if you split the minutes, 24 minutes for one guy, 24 for the other. Just like, no, Myles, you can trust him a little bit more. He's been in some big moments, knows how to do things. But I'm not trying to like dog Myles or anything by saying this. I just feel like if he were to walk, I don't think that a team that's got Nembhard, Mathurin, Jarris Walker, Pascal Siakam, Aaron Nesmith, Tyrese Halliburton, like that group right there. Okay, if they
Still
lose
good.
Turner, it's a loss, but I don't think it sets them back that much. I think they can fill the center void with somebody or a couple of somebodies and still get close to decent production. Maybe not the same level as Myles, but I think the center position is probably the least important in terms of individual for what they do with this team. Like especially for Myles, like he's more of a catch and shoot guy. They're not really setting him up. He's a good rim protector, but even like you said earlier, that's taking a step back. He's not a great on-ball defender. He's gotten, I don't know what it is, but it just seems like he's not a great on-ball defender all the time. Like he's just very inconsistent with that. So, in terms of switching and things like that, not in terms of like just on ball with his position, but I think when he gets caught in switches and things like that, he's better in drop coverage. So, is there somebody maybe that could fill that void and not be that big of a drop off potentially? And let's not rule out could they find somebody in the draft? I mean, they still have their draft pick, right? And who knows what happens with where they fall? They could attach that draft pick plus a player to move up into the draft if somebody becomes available or future picks, whatever, and then try to find their long-term answer in the draft. So I don't know. I just feel like they're not at a crossroads to me if they don't keep Myles. I think that they can still be super competitive if he somehow walks.
That's what I'm at. Like, I feel like I'm not trying to be the bad guy. I know some people are like, he's being a Myles hater. But it's like, look, here's the thing. $30 million is a lot for someone who's not an all-star. We said it before, and that's just what it is. It's like your point before, like, Jalen Smith is a good player. He's a good player. Is he Myles Turner? No. But, like, yeah, if you gave him 25 minutes or something like that, and you gave some other guys some minutes, they'll get the production done. So I do think that Indiana could find someone who's 3/4 of Myles Turner through a trade for probably $15 to $20 million or anything like that. And I think that would fit, what they're looking for. And I think that they could, draft someone to be a backup that could then take that spot after a year or two. And, you'll be all right. But I think that the second you pay Turner, here's the thing. If you give him $25, $30 million, say you do that. How are you getting better? Are you once again banking on internal growth and development? Because it's a lot to bank on when you want to win a championship. So at that point, it's like you can't just continue to wait on this team to develop. Sometimes you got to go out there and make a championship move And I think the Pacers this year stood pat, brought everybody back. If they have another offseason when they do that, it's hard to imagine that they're getting better. They're just retaining.
They could get better though if they have internal growth.
It could, but that's something that you're hoping on instead of being
Sure.
aggressive going out there. And I would love for that to happen. Like this year, we look at this roster. How are we going to get better? Well, we need everybody like a Jarris Walker, a Benedict Mathurin, or a Nembhard to take that next step. You
Shepherd.
need other guys. Like it could happen, but there could also be that argument that you look at the rest of the league, and a lot of teams did get better by forking up, assets to be able to, make trades or free agent signings, anything like that. So I want to see, before you pay Turner, I want to see him get better, take that next step in his game.
And Halliburton is one of those players too that can really take another step forward.
Good.
So
Hey, if he's just healthy, this could be a 50-win team. So I just think for Turner, like if you want to, be able to justify paying him more, I want Turner to get back to being that 3-point shooter that he was, that made him so special, because everybody associates shot blocking and hitting threes with Turner. Turner shot below 36% from three last year. That's not like vintage Myles Turner where he shot, 37 or 38%. And then from a shot blocking standpoint, it was below 2 blocks per game for the first time since the 2017-2018 season. So it's like, let's get back to mastering the basics. I know we can do it. And at that point, hey, if he has another career year, then it's justified to pay him.
Next question, Facci, read it to me.
All right. For the next question, we have faithful listener. Actually, this isn't Aaron. This is a different Aaron. So this is Aaron. It's on Twitter at AaronCD18. I thought this was our boy, Aaron M. But anyway, when do you think the Pacers will or can extend Myles and McConnell?
Quick answer here for you. Myles Turner is not extension eligible. They cannot do anything with that contract. He will be an unrestricted free agent next summer, in the summer of 2025. So we can just put that to bed. T.J. McConnell is not extension eligible until August 6th. So the Pacers cannot extend him until the 6th of August, which I think is a possibility. It could happen. We wondered about Nembhard. I think that McConnell feels a little bit more of a lock to do that. But like I said earlier, it could all depend upon the money too, Facci, with the new contract. So I see you smiling. Do you feel differently than I do?
No, I don't. It's just like Indiana wants to pay everybody.
Yeah.
But it's just physically not possible to bring back this whole team at a pay raise, because we're not the Boston Celtics. We're just simply not. We're not one of those teams, or like the Golden State Warriors, how they were operating before. So unless there is that internal commitment that neither of us know about, or this whole fan base knows about, you got to make a tough decision at some point. And so far, the Pacers have been, dipping into that wallet. I definitely respect it, but I just want to see when that wallet kind of closes and goes back in the pocket for a little bit. Who's the guy on the outside looking in?
Yeah, I mean, with the extension with McConnell, obviously wouldn't kick until next season when the cap does go up too quite a bit. So it might not be that much of a pay raise in terms of what he's making now, percentage-wise, things like that against the cap. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But that is going to wrap it up, Facci, for this episode. We'll be back with our last episode of the week later. So you guys know where to find us at. We'll catch you all then. And Facci, if you're ready to come back for the next episode, hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.